07:14 a.m. The sound was a relay snapping open. Not loud, not dramatic, just a precise metallic click from the power conditioner mounted beneath my desk, a voltage recalibration. The building's grid compensating for morning demand as elevators began their ascent and coffee machines hissed to life in apartments above and below mine. Most people don't hear relays, I do. I was already awake, seated at the narrow steel desk that faced the single floor-to-ceiling window of my apartment. The city below moved in disciplined lanes, delivery trucks aligning with loading docks, pedestrian lights cycling in rigid intervals. The sky was a clean industrial gray, efficient. My apartment reflected the same logic: concrete floors, one matte black sofa, no art on the walls, no fabric except what was structurally necessary. My workstation occupied the center of the space like a surgical instrument, 3 monitors mounted symmetrically, cables braided and concealed. A hardware firewall humming faintly in its ventilated housing. Minimalism is not aesthetic preference, it is signal control. At 07:16 a.m. my phone vibrated once against the glass surface of the desk, not a ringtone, not a notification cascade, one vibration. Registered courier, I reached for it and confirmed biometric unlock. The message preview displayed a sender I recognized immediately. Rathmore Global Logistics, Legal Division. The subject line was sterile. Formal notice of civil liability, immediate response required. I didn't open it immediately. Instead, I glanced at the far left monitor where my network diagnostic interface displayed outbound packet flow. Clean, no anomalies, no unauthorized polling, no suspicious handshake attempts. Only then did I open the attachment. A PDF unfolded across the center screen, black text on white background, no branding flourishes. Legal language is always stripped of personality. My full legal name appeared at the top. Below it, allegation of unauthorized system intrusion. Claim, deliberate manipulation and erasure of employee pension allocation, data totaling $192.4 million. Accusation, malicious exploitation of administrative privileges within Rathmore's automated network. Immediate demand, surrender of any residual credentials, devices, or intellectual property connected to the kernel infrastructure. The relay beneath my desk clicked again as voltage stabilized. I read the document once, then I zoomed in on the digital signature block. Chief Legal Officer, Rathmore Global Logistics, my family's empire. My brother's name was absent as expected. The accusation was technically sophisticated. They were not claiming theft, they were claiming deletion. Deletion implies destruction of records. It implies someone with intimate architectural knowledge, someone capable of bypassing distributed redundancies and reconciliation checkpoints, someone like me. I leaned back in the chair, hands folded lightly in my lap. There is a moment when most people feel betrayal, a tightening in the chest, heat in the face. I felt alignment. If pension data had truly been erased, the kernel would have triggered automated quarantine. The reconciliation engine does not permit silent loss. It isolates anomalies, mirrors them across shadow ledgers, and logs every microsecond of variance. Deletion without trace is impossible in a system I designed, which means this was not deletion. This was narrative. They were building a story that required a villain with technical credibility. I turned my head slightly toward the window. A delivery drone passed between buildings at regulated altitude, stabilizers humming in low harmonic oscillation. Everything outside followed protocol. Inside, so would I. At 07:22 a.m., I powered on the air-gapped workstation to my right. It runs no wireless card, no Bluetooth module, direct fiber into a hardened intrusion detection appliance I assembled myself. If they were accusing me of breach, I would verify the rhythm of the system. Before you defend yourself, you measure the pulse. As the terminal booted, the refrigerator compressor in the kitchen cycled on with a soft mechanical hum, another predictable system. I opened a secure shell and accessed the mirrored diagnostic logs I have maintained since my exile 3 years ago. The passive listener embedded in the kernel still reported synchronization intervals every 800 milliseconds. 07:03 a.m. Administrative override attempt. 07:08 a.m. Pension ledger reconciliation conflict. 07:11 a.m. Forced allocation cascade. 07:13 a.m. Audit suppression command issued under my archived credential hash. The timestamps were too clean. Too rehearsed. Someone had reused my digital certificate. Again, I closed the legal notice and minimized it to the corner of the screen. They believed they had framed a ghost. They believed exile meant disconnection. They forgot one detail. I didn't just build their automated empire, I built its heartbeat. And at 07:29 a.m., as the city reached full operational tempo, I began listening for irregular rhythm, not to retaliate, to calibrate. Because when you understand the heartbeat of a machine, you don't need to attack it, you only need to decide when it stops. The first server room I ever entered smelled like overheated dust and cold air forced through steel vents. I was 12. Rathmore Global Logistics wasn't global yet. It was expanding, aggressively, unevenly, propelled by ambition and debt. My father walked me through the basement as if he were introducing me to a pet he didn't fully understand. This, he said, gesturing to a rack of blinking machines, is the future. The future hummed in layered frequencies, cooling fans rotated at slightly different speeds, hard drives vibrated faintly. Indicator LEDs blinked in disciplined rhythm. Green, green, amber, green. I watched the rhythm. My brother Adrian watched my father. Adrian was 16 then, taller, confident. Already rehearsing the posture of inheritance, he asked questions about margins and expansion strategy. He never asked how the machines talked to each other. I did. The company grew faster than its infrastructure. Warehouses were automated in patches, conveyor systems from Germany, robotic arms from Japan. Custom inventory management software stitched together by consultants who billed by the hour and left documentation as an afterthought. Integration failed weakly. When conveyor arrays in Rotterdam desynchronized and jammed shipments for 12 hours, Adrian announced a temporary mechanical misalignment. I traced it to timestamp drift between PLC controllers. When the Chicago warehouse lost real-time inventory visibility and began shipping duplicate pallets. Adrian blamed vendor firmware instability. I traced it to a race condition in the inventory reconciliation script. They called me into meetings when red lights appeared on dashboards, not to speak, to fix. Invisible fixer, one senior engineer joked once when I was 19 and writing arbitration logic at 3 in the morning. I didn't correct him, it was accurate. Adrian became the golden son by narrative design, press interviews, investor calls, carefully staged photos of him standing beside robotic systems as if he'd soldered them himself. He never wrote a line of production code, but he loved to override. The kernel began as a survival mechanism. I built it when the company nearly collapsed under its own automation chaos. A deterministic orchestration layer that unified every warehouse node under a synchronized clock. Robotic arms in Osaka could pause in precise harmony with conveyor belts in Berlin. Inventory deltas reconciled against live shipment telemetry. It was elegant, it was stable, it was mine. Adrian hated that he didn't understand it. He began requesting visibility privileges. Executive dashboards weren't enough. He wanted direct administrative access to demonstrate hands-on leadership. I refused initially. The board overruled me. He received limited superuser credentials under dual authentication protocol. Every root-level command required 2 signatures, mine and his. That lasted 6 months. Then came the pension module. The system automatically allocated employee retirement contributions based on real revenue inflow. Conservative, deterministic, transparent. Adrian wanted acceleration. "We're leaving money on the table," he said in a boardroom heavy with cologne and polished wood. "Projected Q4 growth justifies front-loading disbursements. Projected growth is not realized revenue." The kernel flagged it immediately when he forced the predictive subroutine into the pension ledger. Allocation exceeded live revenue streams. The reconciliation engine locked the delta into quarantine. He bypassed the warning. He provisioned a temporary root certificate through an IT manager loyal to him, no dual authentication. No oversight, he moved funds into a shadow holding account labeled Strategic Investment Escrow. The acquisition he promised investors collapsed within a quarter. The escrow never reconciled. When internal auditors detected the imbalance, panic spread through the executive floor, not because of employee pensions, because of market exposure. They convened an emergency meeting. I was flown in from Singapore, where I was stabilizing a warehouse robotics update after firmware drift. Jet lag hung behind my eyes like static when I entered the boardroom. The room smelled of cold espresso and stress. On the main screen, transaction logs, privilege escalation, root certificate authentication, pension ledger manipulation. Digital signature, Isla Rathmore. I studied the hash. It was my archive certificate, not my active key. My keys rotate every 90 days. The signature displayed referenced a key decommissioned 4 months prior and stored in a secure certificate repository accessible only to internal administrators. Explain this, the CFO said. It's forged, I replied calmly. Adrian leaned back in his chair. Remote access is trivial for you. He did not accuse, he implied. The board required a narrative that preserved investor confidence. An ambitious cybersecurity architect resentful of invisibility, a rogue override, a dramatic breach. It was cleaner than admitting executive mismanagement and fraudulent reallocation of pension funds. I requested a full repository audit of the certificate vault. Deferred. I requested behavioral cadence analysis of the administrative session. Denied. Instead, a resignation agreement was placed before me, non-disclosure clauses, surrender of active credentials, public statement framing my departure as a strategic divergence. You built the system, my father said quietly. You can build another. He believed infrastructure was transferable. He did not understand authorship. I signed. But before my access was revoked, I embedded a passive listener inside the kernel, hidden within a thermal equilibrium monitoring subroutine. It logs administrative rhythm, keystroke latency, command sequencing, hesitation intervals. Adrian types in bursts, pauses, backspaces frequently. I do not. They erased my name from the executive directory, removed my profile from the corporate website, issued a press release about organizational realignment. They believed exile equaled silence. They believed the Golden Sun had inherited the empire intact. They did not realize the system remembers its architect. And 3 years later, as I read the new legal notice accusing me of erasing pension funds again, I recognized the pattern. They were repeating the crime. Only this time, the stakes were larger. And the Golden Sun was out of safeguards. He thought he had deleted me from the system. He forgot who wrote its memory. Exile was not exile, it was optimization. 3 years ago, when Rathmore issued its press release about my strategic departure, I moved into this apartment and stripped my life down to signal and function. No inherited furniture. No corporate artifacts, no photographs. The only sound that persists here is mechanical compressors, relays, regulated airflow. Emotion is noise. Noise creates blind spots. My professional life did not collapse when I left Rathmore. It became cleaner. I work as an industrial cybersecurity consultant now, quietly, selectively. I audit manufacturing plants that believe automation equals immunity. I dissect SCADA networks that assume firewalls are morality. I test PLC logic in chemical facilities where a mistyped register can trigger a shutdown cascade. I do not advertise. Clients find me through reputation, not search engines. My setup reflects that. On the east wall, 3 hardened servers running compartmentalized virtual machines, one dedicated to traffic simulation, one to behavioral anomaly detection, one to archival storage, no Wi-Fi. No smart assistants, a physical kill switch under the desk that severs outbound power to all active ports. I built the space the way I built the kernel, modular, deterministic, self-correcting. Every morning before coffee, I review rhythm dashboards from the passive listener embedded in Rathmore's network. It feeds me cadence, not content, timing drift, latency anomalies. Authentication rhythm signatures, I don't interfere, I observe. For 3 years the system's pulse remained stable. Adrian had learned caution after the first exposure. Administrative sessions were shorter, less improvisational. He delegated more technical interaction to internal engineers. The fraud, I assumed, had been contained, until 06:58 a.m. this morning. Before the legal notice arrived, the listener flagged a new pattern. Privilege escalation commands issued under my archived credential hash again, but this time not targeting the pension module. They were accessing a new infrastructure layer labeled Megahub Synchronization Grid. I isolated the rhythm signature. Erratic, hesitation spikes at irregular intervals. Backspace corrections mid-command, Adrian, but this wasn't a pension reallocation, it was something larger. I traced the metadata of the command headers, not the data itself, just routing patterns. They were provisioning new warehouse nodes at unprecedented scale. A single automated logistics complex outside Rotterdam, labeled Megahub 1, public press releases had been celebrating it for weeks. The largest fully autonomous distribution center in Europe, AI-driven palletization, drone-integrated dispatch corridors, predictive shipping optimization. What the press did not mention was the funding structure. The megahub had been capitalized partially through internal pension asset reallocation, reclassified as infrastructure investment collateral. The same shadow ledger architecture Adrian once used was now being repurposed, but at industrial scale. They weren't correcting the fraud, they were expanding it. The kernel logs revealed something else. He had modified synchronization tolerance thresholds, subtly. The kernel's global nodes operate within a strict microsecond drift allowance. If latency exceeds threshold, automation enters safe state to prevent mechanical collision or misallocation. Adrian had widened that tolerance. He believed it would improve throughput under heavy load. In reality, it created synchronization vulnerability. Megahub 1 was integrating thousands of robotic endpoints into the existing global network without recalibrating the underlying clock arbitration logic. He was stacking mass on a heartbeat calibrated for precision. I opened the rhythm analysis window and watched the drift accumulate, 0.3 microseconds above baseline, 0.6, 1.2. To a layperson, irrelevant. To a deterministic orchestration engine, fatal under load. The legal notice accusing me of pension deletion was strategic timing. They needed a scapegoat before the megahub inauguration next week. If synchronization anomalies triggered under live demonstration, the narrative would already be primed, rogue former architect destabilizing the system. They were using my archived certificate again. Not because they lacked options, because it made the story believable. I stood and walked to the window. Morning traffic had reached full density. Buses aligned at intersections with mechanical obedience. Pedestrian signals blinked in perfect rhythm. Systems behave when their clocks are respected. Inside my apartment, the monitors displayed Rathmore's pulse, slightly irregular now, a tremor beneath surface performance metrics. They were building their future on code they did not understand. And they were amplifying fraud under the protection of my name. I returned to the desk and placed my hands lightly on the keyboard. I would not defend myself publicly. Not yet. Before you confront a system, you map its full architecture. Before you stop a heartbeat, you measure its strain under load. The megahub inauguration would be live-streamed globally. Investors, regulators, journalists, a showcase of precision and dominance. Adrian believed scale equaled strength. He had forgotten the one constant in distributed systems. Synchronization is not about speed, it is about trust in the clock, and the clock still answers to me. 11:00 a.m. Central European Time. The megahub rose from reclaimed industrial land like a cathedral of steel and glass, 40 meters high, 6 football fields long. Solar arrays stretched across the roof in disciplined geometric symmetry. Inside, 12,000 autonomous mobile robots idled in formation beneath suspended conveyor arteries that moved like mechanical veins across the ceiling. Investors sat in tiered seating behind transparent ballistic panels overlooking the main floor. Journalists adjusted tripods. Drone cameras hovered at regulated altitude. A massive LED display counted down in precise 1-second increments. Rathmore Global Logistics, the future of movement. Adrian stood at center stage in a tailored charcoal suit. The lighting team had calibrated spot intensity to soften his jawline. He held a wireless microphone with the confidence of someone who believes narrative overrides physics. This, he said smoothly, sweeping his arm across the expanse of synchronized machinery, is the most advanced automated logistics ecosystem ever constructed. Behind him, robotic palletizers moved in perfect arcs. Autonomous vehicles glided along embedded magnetic tracks. Inventory drones zipped through aerial lanes like disciplined insects. The crowd murmured approval. From my apartment, 840 kilometers away, I watched through the live stream on a secure monitor. Not for spectacle, for rhythm. The passive listener fed me synchronization intervals in real time. Megahub 1 had been integrated into the global kernel 12 hours earlier. Its scale introduced load variance beyond the original architectural envelope. Drift, 1.8 microseconds. Still within Adrian's widened tolerance band, he had extended allowable drift to 3.5 microseconds to increase operational elasticity. It sounded visionary in investor memos. It was reckless in distributed clock systems. I opened the terminal window labeled arbitration layer. The kill switch function waited there, not a destructive payload, not malware. A deterministic conditional override. If drift exceeded calibrated safe thresholds while public demonstration mode was active, the system would enter synchronized safe state across all nodes. I did not need to inject anything, I only needed to restore the original tolerance. At 11:07 a.m., Adrian initiated the live demo. Engage global synchronization, he said into the microphone. The LED display shifted to real-time metrics: throughput per minute, cross-border shipment velocity, pension-backed investment stability index. He was showcasing the integration of financial systems with physical automation as if it were a single organism. Drift 2.3 microseconds, megahub robots accelerated, conveyor speeds increased by 12%. Inventory drones recalculated flight paths under heavier throughput. Drift 2.9 microseconds, the widened tolerance masked warning thresholds that should have triggered recalibration. My finger hovered over the key, not to sabotage, to correct. I restored the original 1.5 microsecond synchronization limit. Enter. At 11:09:42 a.m., the kernel recalculated drift across global nodes. Megahub 1 exceeded tolerance by 1.4 microseconds. The response was immediate and surgical. Robotic palletizers halted mid-arc, arms suspended with millimeter precision. Conveyor belts decelerated in synchronized reduction rather than abrupt stop. Autonomous vehicles entered safe mode parking patterns. On the LED display, throughput metrics froze. A murmur moved through the investor seating. Adrian's smile faltered for less than half a second before he recovered. Minor calibration adjustment, he said smoothly. Drift recalculation attempts cascaded. The system attempted self-correction under the new tolerance, original tolerance. Megahub load variance remained too high. Global nodes detected desynchronization risk. At 11:10:18 a.m., the kernel initiated full safe state protocol across all integrated warehouses. Tokyo paused, Chicago paused, Sao Paulo paused. The LED display flickered, then replaced throughput metrics with a neutral banner. System paused, authentication anomaly detected. Silence spread faster than panic. Adrian's earpiece crackled. I watched his jaw tighten. Behind him, technicians rushed toward control consoles. "This is a routine fail-safe demonstration," he improvised. It was not. I initiated the second phase. A secure video channel opened and forced itself onto the LED display's input priority layer. My face appeared in the upper right quadrant of the massive screen, overlooking the megahub floor. Minimalist background, no theatrics. The crowd inhaled collectively. "Good morning," I said evenly. Adrian's expression shifted from confusion to recognition. "Isla," he said into the microphone, the name slipping from his control. I nodded slightly. "Your synchronization drift exceeded safe operational tolerance," I continued calmly. The system corrected. The board members seated in the front row leaned forward. Investors exchanged rapid whispers. "This is unauthorized interference," Adrian said. "No," I replied. "This is architectural integrity." I transmitted the first data overlay. On the LED screen, timestamp logs appeared. Administrative override sessions executed under my archive certificate. Behavioral cadence analysis comparing keystroke latency and command sequencing patterns. 2 columns. Left, my historical rhythm signature. Right, the sessions that manipulated pension collateral into megahub funding streams. The disparity was mathematical. Your root certificate access logs show archived key retrieval at 02:13 a.m. On multiple occasions, I said, those keys were decommissioned prior to my resignation. Only internal administrators retained repository access. The CFO stood abruptly from her seat. Adrian attempted to cut the feed. The kernel denied it. Authentication anomaly persisted. I transmitted the second overlay. Shadow ledger transactions mapping pension asset reclassification into infrastructure collateral accounts. Funds rerouted under predictive growth assumptions. No board-level vote. No regulatory disclosure. You expanded the same fraudulent architecture used 3 years ago, I continued. You widened synchronization tolerance thresholds to mask load-induced drift during live demonstration. An investor shouted from the seating tier, "Is this true?" Adrian's composure fractured. "She's manipulating the system," he said, voice thinner now. "She built it, she can destabilize it." "Yes," I said calmly, "I built it." Silence. "And I designed it to protect itself from unauthorized structural deviation." I opened the final overlay. A live demonstration of the behavioral metronome, the passive listener embedded within the kernel's thermal equilibrium module. It displayed administrative session cadence patterns overlaid with biometric typing analysis. "The system does not recognize your rhythm," I said. "It recognizes mine." Regulatory representatives in the front row were already on their phones. The board chairman leaned toward a console, pale. "Isla," he said through the public microphone, "what is required to restore operations?" I did not look at Adrian. "Full forensic audit of pension asset reallocation," I replied. "Immediate suspension of root-level privileges for all executive accounts, public disclosure of synchronization tolerance manipulation, and removal of archived certificate access from internal repositories." Adrian stepped toward the camera feed. "You're destroying the company," he said. "No," I answered. "I'm preventing collapse." I paused deliberately. Scale does not override physics. At 11:16 a.m., after the chairman verbally confirmed initiation of independent audit procedures, I reauthorized recalibration under original synchronization limits. The kernel rebalanced load distribution. Megahub robotics resumed in controlled sequence. Conveyor arteries flowed again. Autonomous vehicles re-entered task cycles. The crowd did not applaud. They assessed the narrative had inverted. Adrian no longer stood at the center of a technological miracle. He stood at the epicenter of exposure. The LED screen faded my image as I terminated the secure channel. Before disconnecting, I delivered the final sentence. "You tried to erase me from the system," I said evenly. "You forgot who wrote the clock." Then the feed went dark. The megahub continued operating, but the illusion of ownership had stopped. Permanently, the fallout did not explode, it unfolded. Within 48 hours of the megahub demonstration, Rathmore's board commissioned an independent forensic audit led by an external cybersecurity firm with no historical ties to the company. The report did not contain emotion, it contained timestamps, archived certificate retrieval logs, behavioral cadence mismatches. Unauthorized pension asset reclassification routed into infrastructure collateral accounts. Synchronization tolerance expansion signed under executive override authority. The numbers spoke without raising their voices. Regulatory agencies initiated formal investigations. Financial institutions suspended executive credit lines pending review. Rathmore stock did not crash dramatically. It decayed steadily, investors reallocating capital away from uncertainty. Adrian resigned publicly under the language of strategic transition. His speaking invitations were withdrawn within a week. Industry panels replaced his name with neutral placeholders. The golden sun did not fall in scandal, he faded in audit. My father issued a brief statement acknowledging oversight gaps and technical misjudgment. It did not mention my name. It did not need to. The board retained me temporarily as independent consultant to stabilize synchronization protocols and resecure certificate repositories. I accepted for 14 days. Long enough to recalibrate tolerance thresholds globally, long enough to revoke archived key access permanently, long enough to delete the passive listener I embedded years ago. On the final day, I sat in a sealed conference room overlooking the megahub floor. Robotic systems moved in flawless alignment beneath tempered glass. Conveyor belts hummed with disciplined cadence. Autonomous vehicles glided in silent arcs. The system was healthy, not because of me, because corruption had been removed. I transferred all final documentation to the new oversight committee and closed the case file. Rathmore anomaly resolved. I declined any executive role, declined public acknowledgement. Declined interviews. Silence is not absence, it is equilibrium. That evening, back in my apartment, the relay beneath my desk clicked softly as voltage stabilized with the city's night cycle. The refrigerator compressor engaged. Traffic hum reduced to distant murmurs. I powered down the workstation. No active listeners remained inside the kernel, no ghost threads, no tether. They attempted to delete me digitally. Instead, they deleted themselves financially and socially through their own misalignment. I did not destroy the empire, I restored the clock. And once the rhythm was correct, I stepped away, because engineers do not seek applause, we seek synchronization, and when the system finally keeps time without us, we return to silence. Precisely engineered, completely ours.